My name is Jennifer Dickson, and I was born in South Africa in 1936. My interest in landscape started when I was very young, because I found the vastness of the African landscape extremely haunting and beautiful and full of silence. Silence being something I look for in communicating through my work. It is about silence. I think I was born to be an artist. I didn't become an artist. I always was. I was in lots of trouble as a child for drawing on the walls of our home. I studied at Goldsmiths College School of Art at the University of London. I went there to be a painter. But it was just after World War II, and there were lots of men in the painting class, very few women, and we were treated as second-rate citizens. So after I had suffered great bullying in the painting class, I went downstairs to a quiet studio, which was the etching studio, and I was weeping there when this little man came up to me and said, "Well, don't just sit there and cry. Get a copper plate and draw on it." And that was how I was introduced to etching, which became a complete obsession with me. It spared me from the behavior in the painting class, and it opened up the world. I never studied photography in a formal way. I was mentored by the American photographer Alex Traub, who taught me everything I know about photography, including the moral aspect of it. Just because I didn't know what I was meant to do in photography, I broke all the rules. For instance, the series Three Mirrors to Narcissus, I overlaid positives using a random dot screen to break them down to get levels of space and light. It was all about light in that series. I printed them because I love paper on etching paper. I exposed the images onto metal plates. It became almost a form of sculpture. And when I had printed them, I came back to this image with this surface of usually handmade Italian paper, Fabriano or Ioano. I imported all my paper from Italy and from France and from Germany, and it became an important component of the work. And then I felt this is not complete without color, so it brought me back to watercolor and to my passion for watercolor. I found out, as I could never earn my living completely from the sale of my work, that I had a skill as a lecturer, and therefore I could justify my travels by lecturing on the places that I journeyed to. This gave me two things. It gave me the knowledge so that I never traveled blindly. I only traveled after I had immersed myself in a culture. And it made it financially viable because I've lived as an independent artist. I have never had a permanent academic position, although I have lectured in Australia, in the United States, in Canada, and of course the series that I developed with Mayo Graham and Mela Constantinidi at the Ottawa Art Gallery, which built the donor base for the Ottawa Art Gallery, because these lectures always sold out, and we developed a whole core of patrons that became involved in the Ottawa Art Gallery. I consider myself a feminist. I fought politically on the feminist front in England, and increasingly so when we came to Canada. I wanted to look at sexuality from the point of the female, not from the point of the male voyeur. And so the whole of the Secret Garden, which was done as a project for International Women's Year, and funded by the NFB Still Photography Division, took on that premise. And it was a very bold thing to do at that time. In 73 to 75, I worked a great deal on with the boxed assemblages as a form of almost small theatre, linked in some cases with actual words. In the 80s, I started to travel compulsively, and I had always been fascinated by history, and so I did my historical research very thoroughly. So I walked in the steps of history. I started to think about the wounds of time, and I began to photograph with those in mind, so that when I visited a site, I knew the history so well I could decode the wounds of time, the damage that had been made to a site or a garden or a building. And this took me to perceive the places in a completely different way. The Credo Project I edited from material that I had photographed over a 10-year span. I would go back to a site 4 or 5 times over a period of several years if I didn't feel I had done it justice. Because I felt that you had to listen to the space and you had to let it reveal itself to you. It was rather like a courtship. I think my art falls between 2 axes, light and dark. You can't have light without dark. You have to understand violence to understand love. A great deal of my work has followed the triptych sequence, especially when I came to work in the historic gardens. I liked to give it not a narrative form, but a symbolic form. On their own, they function independently. Structurally, they function independently, but narratively, they make a whole. In 1984, I finally walked away from being a sessional instructor in universities. I decided I would earn my living as a lecturer. So I would say a formative influence on my organization as an artist has been Revenue Canada. Because during the 70s, all of us in the cultural community were absolutely hounded by Revenue Canada. But we had to clean up our act and be organized, and we had to prove that what we did was what we said we were doing. Then, as I worked on my sequential lectures here, I became involved in building the Ottawa Art Gallery and supporting it financially and building its patrons. We worked very, very hard on that. I wanted to have collections of my work here so that there was no way it would all end up going to the garbage dump. I believe that in the power of beauty as a transformative power, and I believe in the healing power of love. If you're humble enough to listen, you will be given the means to do what you have to do.